So I finally realized the chat does get auto added after the recording, so that was always good to know. Anyway, welcome, welcome, welcome. I hope you are all having a great Wednesday. Who has the best weather out there? I mean, here it's a little bit cool. Not the best, but not bad, not bad,
We're,
not bad.
we're 78 and sunny in the Northeast. So yesterday and today are the most beautiful days, and then tomorrow it's supposed to be 100 and something in the Northeast of US.
Well, at least it's not Arizona. That's all I have to say. My mom is like, when are you gonna come visit? And I'm like, when it's winter. Anyway, we're gonna go ahead and get started. I'm gonna share my lovely, lovely screen and my face. There we go. And we do have a hashtag. It's called Infi Pathfinders. So please, if you can, share out if you enjoy any part of this lovely PD or just want to be a kind person.
Nicole, you're not sharing your slides yet. We see you with
Ah!
your
Oh,
slides next to
there we
you.
go. There we go. I pressed the button.
Okay, good.
There we go. Fancy. Okay, welcome, welcome. Today is going to be day 3. We are all about AI today, a little bit more on cultural responsive and more AI. We'll be doing some coding projects, but today I'll be letting you go slowly so that you can explore coding on your own. But I'll be giving you some coding challenges and we can see if we can use our thinker brains to figure out how to code it without having that step-by-step guidelines that we all so love from day 1 and day 2. So some quick things to take care of really quick. So quick updates. David has fixed things. And so publishing is fixed. You can publish with the unpronounced block. There was a bug regarding that. So if you are making your soundscape project or having your vocabulary reading fluency projects with lots of unpronounced blocks, you're good to go. You can now publish. It won't wipe your code anymore. The other thing that has been fixed is you can now add templates just fine now for all of the lessons like 3 symbols of me and things like that. It will go to the next step. So yesterday we encountered some other bugs like shapes are looking black in the preview, the text rotation is kind of funky, and Macs are always a pain, and resizing images crops out. That is all like almost done, but we haven't pushed those yet. So if there's any other things that I have forgotten, then please let me know. Oh, thank you so much. You really like the step-by-step activities. Oh, that's so great. So we'll be doing that as well. So if you want to stay with me and you don't really feel comfortable quite yet in doing some of the coding challenges, that'll be fine. And we can go through one of the projects together for app design. Okay, hump day. How are we all feeling here? Let's go ahead and start voting for hanging on, hanging on. Anybody else? Anybody totally over it yet? All right, great. And of course, number 4 is the best cat face. Ah, lots of hanging ons. So today's general agenda is how do we build relevance, authentic connection in a world of AI? And most importantly, like understanding how to use AI better and how AI works. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of some of this. I spent quite a lot of time with AI, and it wasn't until very recently that I started digging into the actual development of AI and what it's like to code with the API, like the endpoint that most apps out there use. So ChatGPT and OpenAI have what is called an API endpoint, which allows developers to use their their knowledge base as a base to like reskin. So, for example, if you're familiar with Magic School, they will use part of the ChatGPT Open AI API. They also use other ones like Gemini, depending upon the specific use case. But we'll dig into a little bit about what it's like from a developer standpoint so we can apply some of our coding knowledge from day one and day two within this AI context. So we're going to be doing coding challenges. We'll be doing interactive apps, maps, and timelines. And like I said, lots and lots and lots about AI today because we're going to be using this understanding of AI as a stepping board to have AI be our collaborator for our lesson design. So we're going to use it to make lesson designing easier, whether that's for creating step-by-step milestones for our projects, whether that's creating rubrics, whether that's creating different peer reviews, templates, or whether that's just for brainstorming because you don't know what to really do. We'll be covering all of that. Okay, so I don't know if Rachelle is here yet. Is Rachelle here? Should I send her a message? Otherwise, we can skip to something else.
Yeah,
Once,
she's not here yet.
let me send her a quick message. Oh, technically it's still early. It's already 4:07. Okay, so we'll come back to Rachelle when it's actually 4:15. I'll send her a quick message right now. So she has the invite. Um, and the struggle is real when it comes to navigating
All
Zoom
right, so while you're
sometimes.
doing that, I have a question for everyone if you want to stick it in the chat. If anybody noticed I wasn't here yesterday, unfortunately, I missed yesterday's session. So if anybody could stick in the chat what your favorite thing about yesterday was, so I know what I'm looking forward to when I see the recording.
Ah, there she
And
is.
then,
Okay.
yep, Rochelle just jumped in.
Hello.
Hi, Rochelle.
I think I'm there. There I am. Yay. Hello, hello, hello.
I'm going to make you a co-host. So
Okay.
you just have full power over everything.
Okay. Sounds good to me.
Okay. Yeah, the panel yesterday was amazing. Love the choose your own adventure. People like working on their own projects. Well, that's really great. So what I'm going to do is see if Rochelle, do you have access to everything? You should, right?
I think so.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. So I'm
Yeah.
gonna hand it over to Rochelle a little early because I'm like,
Oh my
and
goodness. You're too funny.
you'll be in good hands. She's a pro at this. So anybody seen
Uh,
Rochelle before? At other conferences, she's everywhere.
I know I'm trying to look at some of the names in here really quickly, and you never know. Ah, Nedco, very nice. I love that conference in Breckenridge. He- Hey, Rachel. I was just getting to I saw your name. I'm like, oh. Oh my goodness. It's so awesome to have these things. Good morning, everybody. So let's see here. Let me find my slides first of all. And I have a different little title here, but I am going to type into the chat. Oops, 1 second. Wrong button. Nicole's on Home Pro. Type into the chat. There's a survey that I have, and if you've been at any of my sessions ever over the last at least 7 years. I've been presenting at conferences for almost 15 years now and have done a lot more, but I decided to try something different about 7 years ago and I made surveys. And so I dropped a link to a survey in there and I make it really easy for me to remember when I make a bit.ly, and it's on the screen as well. It's just my last name, Poth, lowercase and capital AI. Um, because then I can just, if somebody says, what was that again? Oh, it's Poth AI. Or if I'm doing one on STEM, it's Poth STEM. Like you get the idea. So um, that survey, it's like it's a learning tool for me for a couple reasons. Because one, I have my iPad here and I can look at some of the responses that come in. Two, I can learn about what people are using, what their concerns are, what the challenges are, just different questions. And this is an area that I have really enjoyed speaking about, teaching about, learning about, writing about, you name it, well, I started 8 years ago to learn about AI and then wrote an article. And the reason was to write an article because the things I was doing in my classroom, I was writing about, but that was easy. So I wanted to challenge myself to do something a little bit differently. So I did some research about AI and wrote an article that came out in January of 2018. Then I decided to start teaching about it in my classroom and some presentations at conferences. Whether or not I was actually ready to do that, I just threw myself in, which I think you kind of have to do with a lot of these different things that we're seeing in education. And the rest is kind of history. I've just continued to change and learn new things as we all have, especially over the last almost 3 years. In a few months, it'll be 3 years since ChatGPT, and we've seen so many other tools out there. So um, I would love for you to fill out my survey if you don't mind. And just really quickly about me, I am a full-time language educator. I've taught French, I teach Spanish, and I teach a course to eighth graders called STEAM What's Next in Emerging Technology. And I've used a lot of different tools in those classes over the years because I love trying new things. And so, one thing that I like about it is I get to see what that student experience is like. I have fun trying it out myself. I don't always have all the answers, but I learn from them, and the kids think it's pretty cool when they teach us something too. So I do teach full time, and I'm also a full-time consultant. So I work with schools and provide lots of training on AI, cybersecurity, STEM, you name it, pretty much anything and everything. Just because I love those opportunities to get to meet other educators, and I'm also an attorney. So I do love school. For a period of time, I really was living in school, like the kids tend to think that we do, because I was leaving school and going to school at night. So if at any point you have questions, you have resources to share, anything, if I don't know the answer, I will find the answer to you. And I knew somebody was going to say about sleeping. I do sleep, maybe more so in the summer a little bit, but there's so much to learn. So thank you for doing the survey. The link is in the chat. The questions are really quite helpful for me. And like I said, I won't spam you. It's just for me to drive at the time that we have here together. And I can kind of predict some of the responses in some cases. But at any rate, I may ask you some questions throughout to make it interactive as well. So here's the first question for you. And I'm going to set the timer. And I didn't connect the sound, so you won't hear the cool music, but that's okay. And in the chat, type, why do we need to know about AI? And I always like to see the answer. So now I'm asking you to not only do my survey, but also type in the chat. All right. 14 seconds. You can still keep typing it in. I love these answers. And time is up. Not really, just according to the video, the time is up. So let's see. Technology is constantly evolving to use it effectively. Students are already using it. I hear that a lot. Like they're using it and they need to understand how to use it safely, effectively, ethically, responsibly, all of those things that we're hearing. How to teach them to recognize it on the internet and when it's appropriate to use. If ever, I love that answer, Lauren, because students do tend to think, oh, it's on the internet. It's true. Like I had it write a bio about me and it put in that I already had a PhD. This is 2 years ago. I was like, if only that were true, but maybe it is true. And there's there's a book that I read called Future Proof by Kevin Roose, and he is a New York Times journalist, columnist. He does some speaking. He has a podcast. He's done a lot of work based on technology. And I had a chance to sit down at ISTE 2 summers ago when he was the closing keynote. And I read his book before I met with him, and I got to have that interview and ask him questions. And a couple of things really stuck out in that book to me. And it's over on my right side here. I always have like really close nearby, so I never forget it. But it's future proof. And he has like 9 elements and things to think about in preparing for the future. When he talked about AI, he talked about how like we've talked about media literacy, digital literacy, because we have all these technologies available to us, and we need to shift that to be like digital discernment. And because that discernment is trying to figure out like, is this real? Is this not real? Is it factual information? And students need these underlying skills to be able to sort through it. And yes, use AI because we know that they will, but to still be able to have the skill sets to know how to evaluate, process, synthesize all of that information. And ISTE ASCD put out some more information in the last 2 weeks. And you may have been hearing about like Portrait of a Graduate. They have an AI ready graduate now, and some of those things are like a synthesizer, a creator, an innovator, and being able to process this information. And so the technology, it is here to stay. Serena, you are right, and it can be a resource. It's becoming stronger and more powerful every day. If depending on what you use in your daily work, whether personal or professional, you may find there's new features and functionalities that weren't there the day before. And you're like, okay, I guess I don't even have to type that email response because it's already written there for me. Or I don't even have to read the email because on the top it has bullet points of what the email is about. But you still want to read it because it doesn't always get it correct. And I like how Ben says it's a tech that will fundamentally change how humans work and learn. It is especially going to change the kind of jobs that will be available to our students in their careers. And that's a great point because we are preparing our students for the future. And I've done a lot of training with school districts of varying sizes and in different geographical locations. And last spring, I presented a session, a 3-hour workshop on AI to educators in Massachusetts. And most of them were elementary or middle school educators. And a lot of them did not see the relevance to having AI in the classroom, to teaching about it, to using it, because they just didn't know where to fit it. And I appreciate that because everybody comes at it from different angles. But I said, we are preparing students, and what better place to prepare them than in our classrooms where we are supporting them and guiding them in the ethical and effective use of it. And then looking to the future, AI is the #1 skill in demand. And there was a survey done about 9 months ago, and they asked more than 3,000 employers from more than 1,000 different types of work areas, industries, about predictions for AI use in their work and hiring and all these different questions. And the percentage was that 74% of those more than 3,000 they surveyed said that hiring an employee with skills and AI knowledge is like critical. It's in demand, it's essential. And so there's that. And then most of them are saying that like 80%, I think, said that they see using AI every day in their work. And a few weeks ago, I presented at a law school a session on AI, and there were about 60 attorneys in the room, and only 4 of those 60 had used ChatGPT and no other large language model. And they didn't realize all of the resources available to attorneys that are housed like similar to these big platforms we use in education that are for attorneys. And so it is kind of everywhere, and people are being asked to use it. and may not have the training. And so when I got my doctorate last year, the focus was on the need for PD specific to AI, but also to other technologies in general. Oh, Krishna, it's become ubiquitous everywhere. And even if we're not using it ourselves, we need a solid understanding of what it is and the issues associated with it. I love that answer. And yes, Lauren, the term digital discernment, I think of that often. Portrait of a Graduate. Thank you for sharing that, Katie. And now the challenge is, how do we assess to see whether students have mastered certain skill sets? Of course, AI may play a role in the assessment. Oh, and Rachel, I forgot. Yes, you are in Massachusetts. Thank you, everybody, for filling in some answers into the that little question there. And then I always ask if people want an overview of AI terms. Oops, let me skip this one here because I have a lot of slides. And in some cases, most don't, or it's like an even split. But I do like to share some different resources with you. This is a slide from the organization. It's teachai.org. And for people that came in a little bit later, I'm going to drop this survey back in there again, so you can see that in the chat since I keep referring to it. But this organization is a collaboration between code.org, ETS, Khan Academy, and ISTE, which is the International Society for Technology and Education. And what they have done is they have put together toolkits with slideshows, sample guidelines, policies, information about states that have adopted K through 12 policies, which states have. They have links to guidelines, for example, like Virginia, Nevada, and some other states have shared their policies. And it's all available for educators to use, for families to look at for free. And you can take some of their sample policies and guidelines if you're building your own. But people who come into this and they're looking for ideas for teaching about I always say this is a great activity. Like this could be something just to start a conversation. Where do we see AI? How is it being used? And at the bottom, like it is not going away. It is all around us, of course. But getting students, even the earliest, the youngest learners, to understand that like when we're using text to speech, or if we're going from point A to point B and we're using the GPS or Google or something, that there's AI involved in that. And so they can identify it. So being able to identify it, understand what it is, know what it's not, that it's not going away. I think it's just an easy activity that you can pull into any grade level, even just for a quick conversation, or you can expand it into a longer conversation, a research project. Students can create or design things for like pros and cons. When you think about, the impact of AI, there's a lot of questions about the impact on the environment. And so then you talk about sustainability, so that you can bring that into a science class. You can bring that into an ELA course where students are writing an argument about, or writing a debate or some type of informative essay on AI. And so I'd like to share that with you. And here's another little fun activity if you're planning some for your lessons, because I'm going to share some ideas for you for actual little mini lessons, but also some tools for creating lesson plans or activities to use within your classroom. But I made this one up a couple of years ago, and I keep checking to see if these are still relevant uses of AI. Number 7, commuting, is your Uber and Lyft and things like that. So this simple activity that I made up is basically look at the 10, give yourself a point for every one of those 10 that you use on a most everyday basis. And over the past couple of years, I have seen more 9s and 10s than I did in the first 5 years when I started this. And even in some students, some of my students have been at like a 7, an 8, or a 9, because in their homes have smart home devices and they're using iPhones with facial recognition, and they're all over social media. I even had a student that in 9th grade was using Uber Eats. I'm like, what are you using Uber Eats for? I hoped it was something good here in Pittsburgh, but it was the McDonald's down the road. And yeah, feel free to type in the chat if you're a 10. I was a 7 up until November of 2020 when I had extra time on my hands, as we all did. And I decided, well, you know what? I'm gonna start watching Netflix because I had never watched Netflix. And I have seen some 5s as well, and even lower than 5s. So, oh, yes. And Rachel, the Waymo self-driving car in San Francisco, it's funny that you say that because I was in Monterey, California at the end of January to work with a group of administrators on AI primarily, but also on AI in the law, which I've been doing. And I took myself out to eat to the Fisherman's Wharf, and I got an Uber and I got in the car, And the man was just sitting there with his arms crossed, turning around, talking to me like, "So, what brings you to town? How long you here for? Having a car?" I'm like, his hands were not on the wheel. It was a self-driving Tesla. I was like, does that make people nervous? I mean, I was very curious about it, and I wasn't, we were going a short distance. I don't know how I would feel about a longer distance, but it was really neat to be in that environment and, you know, see how it operated and see the screen and all the things that it picks up. And it is a little bit scary and unnerving, but I think that I think back to Knight Rider all the years ago. Anybody that's in here that ever saw that show, I showed the initial clip to my students, and I didn't say who David Hasselhoff was or anything, but I just previewed like, there's a prediction that by the year 2040, there will be 33 million self-driving cars on the road, and that's true. That was a statistic that I had read. And I asked students, would you want one? And almost all of them said, no, 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 no. And I said, well, I wouldn't mind one, one of those days where you wake up and you're so tired to drive into work. But I showed them the first episode, part of the episode, when Michael walks in and sees the car. Kit, if you're not familiar, you'll have to look up Knight Rider and see it. It's a talking car, and he talks into his watch, which flash forward, if you talk into your watch, who knew? But he's like, whoa, the car is talking to me. And when my students left, they knew who David Hasselhoff was, and it was very interesting how they knew that. Apparently, it was from SpongeBob and something else, but it's just a quick activity that you can do. And if you're working with elementary students, which I know we have some of you in this room that are, this is something they may not have Uber Eats or have credit card or anything like that, but you could ask them, like, think about your family or the people that you are surrounded with. And what do you see them using? And so just an idea. Okay, so nobody really needed definitions of AI in all those terms. So the only thing that I'm going to say, and thank you, I got more responses for my survey. We have 42 participants. You really have no idea how helpful this is for me. So if you don't mind answering some of those questions and just giving some feedback, and you can skip some too, just it helps me thinking forward. So the only things that I'm going to say about these next two is when looking at sites, especially because I've been doing work and training and working with schools on AI and the law, and making sure that the platforms have been vetted, they're in legal compliance, we worry about data privacy and all of these things, is that if you don't take the time to read all the legalese, which I enjoy reading all of that, there are a lot of words that might be in there. You might see the neural network, you might see some other definition, it might be just an abbreviation, and kind of knowing what those things are. But the only thing I will mention about the neural network is an activity that you can use in any grade level that's kind of fun if you haven't done it, is Google Quick Draw, which is a great example of a neural network because it gives you a word and then you have to draw it. And as you're drawing it, and let's say you have to draw a pizza and you start drawing things that are square, it's never going to guess, in most cases, a pizza unless you put like pepperoni and it's very like, a square pizza. But it sorts things. So if I said to you, I have a banana, an apple, a strawberry, and a book, your brain is thinking like, okay, what's the connection? If I say, which one of those does not belong? Hopefully everybody would say, well, the book doesn't because the rest are fruits. But I can tell you from prior experiences that I've had students who've argued with me when I've done some of those things. But a neural network learns what things is because it sorts through. It's like when you do a Google search, it goes out and it looks through all the other information, gives you what you need. I will say the machine learning, you might see listed on a site as ML and not actually say machine learning, but that's a subset of AI and it just can do different things over time. It can block emails that you've marked as spam previously, and it learns like, oh, well, Rachelle doesn't want this email, so I'm going to take care of it for her, but it makes mistakes. NLP is one I definitely want to spell out. That's natural language processing. So that is how you are able to have those conversations with ChatGPT, your Alexas, your Siris, the little pop-up windows on your screen. It's because they've been programmed to understand and respond to human language. And when that happens, you may not give a full sentence. It might just be a word, like if you've had a problem with an order and you type in wrong item. It has been programmed and it brings in a sentence that says, I understand that you received the wrong item. Yes. And you can resolve something so much quicker than you could with an actual human on the line. So you may see NLP in a lot of these different sites that you might use, especially if they do have custom tutors, like Magic School has a tutor, and anything that has character, the history, hello history, character chats, chatbots, all of those different things, or any of those large language models, those will use NLP so that you can have those conversations that feel like they are actual real conversations. So just want to throw those out there. Last thing, and then I'm going to look at some tools here. Do you see the big difference between 2025 and 2027? And usually I do it in a more dramatic fashion. I don't have the big arrow there, but I wait and then boom, number 3 on the list, because as I teach in my classroom as a language teacher, I want my students to learn Spanish. I want them to love it as much as I do because there are so many benefits to language learning. But I also realize I need to look at my classroom through a different lens, and that is, how do I prepare them for the future, especially when we don't necessarily know what the jobs of the future may be. So these 10, what's nice about it is that even though number 3 is the AI and number 7 is technological literacy, all of the other ones around it are those skills that we've been worrying about, that people are saying they're going to lose: creativity, collaboration, critical thinking. They're all still on there. And so when I think about activities for my classroom, and sometimes I use a thought partner, I'll use one of these great platforms that are out there and say, well, give me 10 great ideas, creative ideas to whatever the rest of my prompt is. But I also want to make sure that I'm teaching them Spanish, but that I'm helping them to build these skills and giving them opportunities to use AI in learning Spanish, or for you to use AI in whatever that you are teaching your students. And so I share this just like the mindset, like the essentially human skills are still there. And it's definitely up to us to find a way to leverage the technology, but also to keep, as we hear, the human in the loop. And a lot of what we do, the work that we do, especially with the different tools that are out there, it can be quite time consuming to figure out what tool to use, which one's the best. Are we going to use just a teacher facing tool or a student facing tool? And there's a lot of questions like that. So I do have, and let me skip here for one moment, because there's no joke to how many slides I have in this. One thing that I want to share with you is, if you haven't heard of these, and I'm curious in the chat, if you put a Y or an N, if you have ever seen these ISTE hands-on AI project guides. And I love when the responses come in. And let's see here. Yes, yes. Ah, we got a good mix here of yes, a lot of no's. Awesome. I love giving you like new new ideas. So these are available to anybody to download, and they have them for elementary, secondary, electives, computer science, and ethics. And the ethics one is newer. And so basically, it's a guide that you can download into PDF, or you can just leave it on your screen. And for each of those different books, they have lessons that include relevant ISTE standards, if there's NGSS standards, the Common Core standards, ELA standards, whatever are the standards that are relevant. And also, if they are the ISTE standards, standards for students, for educators, or whatever the role is. But the best part is that in all of this, I always say you don't have to be the expert. You just need to know enough to get started, to get the students started. But with this, when you open these guides, they have those standards. They have an overview of what the lesson, the activities are, timing. They have materials that you need, what you need to do to prepare, definitions, and then all of the activities. But they also provide differentiation, enrichment, anything and everything you could possibly want into a lesson. Now, granted, you could go to ChatGPT and ask it to create you a lesson on this topic that's focused on students learning about what is an algorithm, for example. But there are no guarantees, and what it's going to give you is going to be the best. It might not be designed that's going to meet the needs of your students. It may not offer suggestions for differentiation or even give definitions unless the prompting, because prompting, that's one question on the survey, is like how to write it most efficiently. And what I have done, there's a lot of frameworks out there. There's one with Prepare that was in the book with Dan Fitzpatrick. And there was one that was ASAP and as specific as possible. I'm like, that's not working for me. I say concise, specific, but really, sometimes you're not concise. Sometimes you just type in everything you want. Like you are teaching eighth grade students, they're learning about this topic, class periods are this long. I want this to be for 4 or 5 lessons. I need uh, a unit outline, lesson plans for each day, definitions, activities, sample project ideas, assessment. You just list all of those things one time, and then it will generate all of those things at one time instead of having to go back and realize, oh, well, it by default thinks all class periods are 50 minutes and you only want one class period for this. So the more specific you are in asking it for everything that you want in that one prompt, you're going to get a better output. And so, like I was saying, you could create lessons like are available in these guides with ChatGPT or some of the other tools, but these guides were created by people who are in the classroom and you know that they've been vetted, they've tried them. I helped with one of them for the electives on the use of Google Translate, and my students were like, wait, you're letting us use Google Translate? And I said, well, I don't know that I've ever actually let you use it. I feel like language educators were more prepared than anybody else for the use of translators. But it helps them to really think through the process, and they're available for free. So you can grab those. That's a great way to get started if you're looking for, like for lessons. And even if you don't have a ton of time, there are 4, and I think in some cases 5 lessons in each of these books. So you can definitely find something that will work for you and you can adjust it as need be. But it's just an easy way to get started with something without having to spend a ton of time doing the research, finding the wording, the activities, and writing all of that out. So I do like to share that. And I'm glad that there were a lot of you that did not know about the ISTE guides. Okay, now here's my question. Well, here's my funny moment for you. And thank you for sharing your responses. And Paige, thanks for putting that link in there as well. The ethics one is a great one. And they beat me to it, putting those links in. So I have a few that I will be putting in, and I'm going to, because I saw some more people join, I'm going to drop my survey in again because that is going to guide. So I don't know if you've ever seen this comic before or not, but it is kind of funny, depending on which side. We've all been there. But here's my task for you, and this is what I recommend all the time, is take a moment to think about, write down what is something that is involved in your work, a planning instructional task that you have that takes a lot of time, something that you've taught that you've run out of ideas for, or maybe it's something that you're just like, oh my goodness, this is that topic again, and I don't know what to do with it. So take, a few moments and think about a few. I always say like 3 to 5 things, maybe jot them down on a piece of note paper, or just keep them in your mind because there's a reason for this. And another little fun thing for lessons that you can do that I think is great is using any of those generative AI tools and ask it to create some image that you can use as a hook into the lesson, or it could be something at the end of the class to have students write about it, talk about it, turn to the neighbor and discuss it, analyze it, um, write a creative story about it, like even elementary students, like whatever you're teaching them, then put some prompt together to have it make an image. And then there's lots of possibilities that you can use that. So you're teaching them about AI, about the generative AI, and then you're getting them to build a lot of other skills in the process. And so, oh yeah, new lessons, parent emails, routine administrative tasks as a teacher, finding all the standards that are addressed by the lesson or unit of study. Yes, all of those things are so time consuming. And from administrators, I often hear that their number one use for any AI, whether ChatGPT or any of the platforms, is for emails and newsletters, because sometimes you get an email and it's not like the nicest, and you sit down, you hurry up and you want to respond, but then you want to think before you click and hit send. And so sometimes having that thought partner, like, and there's a site out there that can analyze the tone of a message that you've received and one that you are about to send, because of course there's a site for everything. Schedules, data sets, presenting them in an easy to read fashion. Oh, thanks so much, everybody, for sharing these ideas. So I ask you this because as I show some of these tools, yay, a couple more responses. And you'll know why, because I ask about some of the tools at the bottom. I have a very long list, And I can usually predict which ones most people have heard of and are familiar with. And then I get very excited about the ones that I can kind of figure you may not have heard of that offer a lot, that are very robust. And also knowing that I have gone through and I have read those privacy policies and I've looked at the dates on them. And if you do click on data privacy, safety center, security center, they vary by name on the different sites. It should not be hard to find. And when you look at it, always look at the most recent update. If it was 2023, that is a problem. And I can tell you that for some, I did find that the last update was at the end of 2023. And then I sent an email to say, like, look, educators are looking to these tools. They need to make sure they're in compliance. And the most recent update you have is well over a year and a half ago. You probably want to like go back through that. And I've also had some friends who had me review policies for them. So I am not kidding when I say I enjoy reviewing policies. So because I kind of, at this point, I know what to look for and what should be there. So I can help with that. So here's what we're going to do. Let me minimize. Actually, let me temporarily stop sharing really quickly and go back because that'll make it easier. So the fun thing is this is a time for trying things out. And I will show you a couple of different tools. In the chat, I'm going to type in, let's see here, a code. Well, a couple of codes for you, actually, I should say. This one's going to be a little bit longer, but that's all right. So there's one coming your way in a moment. And some of these offer uh, like extended promos and trials and all of those types of things. There we go. Okay. It didn't want to copy. There we go. So there's one. And then I have another one that is a bit.ly. And not that you need to click on these now, but these will be coming up. One is easier for me to remember because I did make a bit.ly for that one. And again, you don't have to go to those, but in the event you want to have an extended period of trial, you can click on those. So now I'll go back to my sharing. And I'm going to share with you a tool called Almanac. And Almanac is very friendly. It has good morning, Rachelle Dene. Very nice. And similar to, because on the survey, I could tell you that the number one answer was Canva. Everybody that has done the survey, except for one person, has used Canva. And that is probably the first, one of the first that had the AI enhancements that announced it. And then, of course, there are many, many more than what I have listed. I do have a long list there, of course. The second most common answer is Magic School. And then it's surprising that other ones like Brisk and some of these others that are on there that people haven't actually heard of, but there's no shortage of choices. So what I will say about this, and yeah, Katie, I love the tools that I'm showing, like all of those ones in that list. I really do. It's hard to pick a favorite because a lot of them do the same things, but each of them I feel has something that's like a standout feature that sets them apart from the other ones. And School AI is another great one. Yeah, I do. I use a lot of them and I love the student response with the ones that are student facing. And then I also love like my own reaction when I try a new one. I'm like, whoa, that is unbelievable that it just did what it did. So with this one, I won't go through, and this is an almanac with a K at the end. So you'll see some commonalities, and let me enlarge the screen. So similar to what you might find if you go to Magic School or one of the other tools that are in that survey, like Brisk, for example, some of them have the same kind of layout across the top, just depending on how it's been designed. And then they also have all of these different things that you can create. So I saw in the chat, lesson plan. So you can click on lesson plan and I have different courses that I've had over the years, some different things I've done for higher ed. So if I want to make a lesson plan on podcasting, and I'll just say, make a lesson for college students on podcasting. And those are optional. And I hit start. So then it's going to think for a minute. And over here, very similar to ChatGPT and the other tools, you'll see it just cranks out the lesson plan, the materials that I need, has a nice table with the outline and an assessment, follow-up assignment, and then that's it. Now, you can edit anything. So if you say like, yeah, that's great, looks good, open it in editor. And then once it's opened in editor, you can change anything. And then over here on the right, you can differentiate it. So if you want to make different versions of it, you tell it what exactly you want it to do. So maybe you want it to be a shorter time period, you want extended time, any of those types of things, differentiate the content, the reading level of it. So again, depending on what you created, you can change the reading level of it to different grades. You can translate it to a lot of different languages, so that's also helpful, especially depending on in your school, you might have students coming in like I did, where some speak Russian, some spoke Swahili, and being able to communicate with them and families, you want to make sure that they understand that. So that promotes accessibility, which is huge, of course. And then it functions very similar to other tools and platforms that we're using, whether it's Microsoft Word or Google Documents. And so that is just one example. But what I really like about this one that I use a lot are slides. And so if I pick, say, I'll pick math and I'm going to do equivalent fractions and I'm going to say make 10 slides about fractions for, I'll say third grade, because that's what I had up top. So I hit start and it's going to think a little bit. And first, now they changed this. It used to automatically make the slide deck, but now it's different. So it'll give you an overview of what the slide deck is going to be. So if you go through and you're like, you know what, that looks pretty good. I have the beginning, I have a reflection, I have the quiz, review, conclusion. Awesome. But they also have this helpful little assistant over here with AI that you can ask it to get rid of slides, add slides, modify anything. So I'm going to say, you know what, this looks great. I'm going to create my slides. And so it's going to generate. Now, if you've used Brisk, when I first used Brisk about 2 years ago, I was wowed when I made the slides. And that is something that I always talk about first is the slides, because I know how long it does take to make those slides. Now, sometimes this moves a little bit slower depending on the network, but then it does pick up the kind of pace. So I'll give it about 10 seconds to do this. Things that are good reminders are to always read to make sure that it's, legible, because the size of the font for accessibility. You can change the color of it, so make it accessible. You can add speaker notes. You can even generate speaker notes for you, so you don't have to do any of that. So you have the key points, you have the transition, and then a question. Can you think of fractions that look different but actually mean the same amount? And it would continue to generate the slides, but I'm going to let it pause there and go back and show you what a completed one looks like. And now I've made a lot of slides over the years. Oh, here we go, my resources. And so here was one that was equivalent fractions from a month ago. So the front one looked very similar, but something that I like about this, it's like, what are fractions? And it gives you the bullet points and then a pizza. So students, as they're learning it, they could think of the pizza and if they've eaten and how much of the pizza they've eaten. And like on this one, what I would do is I would probably go in and resize it, make it a little bit bigger, change the background. But going through it, you can always change it. And the other part of this is whenever you think it's ready, you can present it to your class, or you can also export it into any of those other formats, Google Slides, PDF, or PowerPoint. And once they're in the Google Slides, for example, you can always embed videos and do different things. So I like sharing Almanac because it's one that not a lot of people know about. And it has those different tools similar to Magic School. Also has, specific to like lesson planning. I have some lessons there, different resources. And then it has report cards. So you can do a report card project. So somebody had mentioned, I mean, I wouldn't put the Latin in there. Like I would change the comments in that, but you have a lot of options with it. And the output, again, the languages are there. So if you have been using Magic School and you're like, I want to try something that's a little bit different, maybe Almanac is one that you try because it has a lot of the same. It doesn't have as many of those other AI tools as Magic School does, but it has some other functionalities that might be something that you are looking for. And so I don't know what anybody thinks about that one, but it's always fun to share. Hey, you are welcome. And yes, the pace that they're moving at with all the new features and changes, it's I mean, Ethan Mollick said it at the end of ISTE last year. It's like this is the worst AI you're going to see. And looking at that, you're like, that's pretty good. Like that made it really quickly. And this is the worst. It's only going to get better. Okay, so that is Almanac. Now, when I said I don't necessarily like to play favorites, I sometimes actually play favorites. And here's why I play a favorite with this one. It's called Eduade, and on my survey, I think only 2 people had used it. So, yay, that's awesome. This was created by 2 teachers, both named Thomas, both from originally from Pittsburgh, where I'm located in Pennsylvania, and they were teaching across the hall from each other for years and years, had a conversation about creating a platform, and that is what you're seeing here, Eduade. Thomas Thompson, who is here, is was in the classroom. He's not in the classroom, but Thomas Hummel, the other Thomas, is still in the classroom teaching. And so, what I like about this is that you have something that has been created by teachers who are still either in or very much connected with the classroom and understand the need for legal compliance. They understand all of the demands and things that educators need when it comes to preparing lessons and planning instruction for their students. And so they continue to build out their platform. And so when I say I don't play favorites, I sometimes play with this one or play a favorite with this one because of that fact. But I do want to show you before going into the tools, when you look at privacy, data privacy, security, anything with information, even if a site says like, we don't use your information, that's just saying that they personally, like in this case, like Eduade would not use your information, but whatever is in the background that is running and processing information, especially if it's a paid platform, those have access to your information, and there's not a guarantee that they don't take your information and use it or share it. So you always want to look at the privacy. And I can tell you, this is a good product to use. It is fully teacher facing, although they do have some updates that enable you, I mean, things that you create, then you can place in front of students and activities for students, but it's not like the students are engaging with a chatbot or talking with somebody from history, for example. So when looking at a privacy policy, just looking down to see, do we collect the data? How do payments work? But the bigger picture, and this is the part that I say, like, I like to read. So last updated April 2nd. So very, very recent. I would say anything, this year is fine. If it's January, we're moving in the second half of the year now, but that's still not a problem. But if we get to be into like October, November, and it's still back to January, then they need to update it. And you can probably bet that I'll be sending an email. And I've gotten to know like all of these people and all of these companies, as many people here in this group have too, probably because they're very approachable. They're always there to help and support. And so looking at this one, I'm just going to scroll. They have personally identifiable information, and things that you should notice throughout is like where you contact them, and they have it, the terms of service, if it is paid. And I can tell you that this is a free and paid, it's free, and then the price per month is only $5.99. And if you would end up getting it for a year, it's like $48. And I joke and I say, like, I'm not sure that you can get a coffee in some places for the price of having this for a month. And people will say, nope, nope, you can't. But these are some of the things that you would want, geolocation data, like, do you know where I am when I'm working on this? Legal compliance, and then your rights. So other sites like Magic School has a 93% rating with common sense. Brisk also has a 93%. Their ratings, their privacy policies are very similar to Eduade. School AI also has a very good one, but you should have these different rights. I love the right to complain about the handling. And so going through, this is a lot to read. And so I'm telling you, I have read it multiple times. They talk about any other state-specific requirements. And then these are those behind the scenes that may be there that might have access to your information. So Paddle is what they use if you pay for the subscription. Changes, how they protect your information. And something else that is really important is a response plan, because if there's an incident where you enter information accidentally or something happens, they have steps in place. And so when these different companies and platforms have that, and then ways to contact them and a time frame, even in the world of work, one example, like, well, world of work and education, Power School had a big cyber attack back in the fall, and it took a while for people to be notified of it. And then I think it was in Illinois that they made it that it's required now that if there is a cyber attack, that that organization has 30 or 72 hours, 3 days to notify impacted parties, because one of those attacks they realized after going back through to see what was, at risk. And I think it went back to 8 years, if not 10 years, potentially of students and information related to all of those students and teachers and everybody in the school. It's very scary. So you want to make sure that your information is safe. So that is kind of an aside, but that's something that you would look for privacy. And with Eduade, similar to what you saw with Almanac, you have these different categories across the top. And so it's very easy to navigate. And I'm checking my survey again just to see if I got some new responses that change things. Uh, but they have some new things that they added on. And organizers, I knew about 2 months ago, and they only announced them about a month ago. So if you use some of these in your classroom, you have sequence of events, marking the text, you can give it the prompt, change the grade level. So you got preschool all the way up. If you have underclass students, you can just tell it what grade level for it. Typically, you may not use like a KWL chart in like a higher education setting. They have different games. So who doesn't love a good game of Jeopardy or bingo or any of those? Stand up, sit down, the history of what you've created, and then they have your own teaching AI teaching assistant. And so it's similar to other platforms that have a teaching assistant. Eduade has one. And so it's going to help you plan lessons. So how can I support you today? Well, explain a concept. And then down here, you could ask it a question. And then let me go back over here to the generator. Oh yeah, you can probably see my other tabs on the top. I got Diffit up there. So does anybody want to type in a topic and a grade level into the chat? Age of exploration. Okay. And as per my usual, I'm putting my survey in again just because I love, all right. So age of exploration, I'm going to copy that in. So what you do is at the top, you have, I mean, it's showing you everything right now. And then lower, you can do topic, document, or a website. So I'm just going to type in, and you just really need to type in 2 words. And the grade level, I'm going to choose middle school. And then over here, minimize, I hit enhance. So somebody gave me the topic roller derby last year at ISTE during one of my sessions, and I thought it was hilarious. And it was when I was showing Eduade. And I created all of these different things, and it was unbelievable that it took all of that and made it into really like beneficial learning experiences. There was a debate, there were all of these things. So we have the age of exploration. So it took my 2 words, and students will be able to summarize the key motivations and discoveries. I'm like, okay, that's great. So now what I do is maybe this is something new that I'm teaching. I have a friend that was teaching 6th grade for 20 years. And then 2 days before the start of the new school year, she was told she was teaching the 2nd grade. If you told me I'm shifting levels of a language, not such a big deal. Grade levels like that, big deal. And that's pre any of the generative AI that we have. So had that happened at a time when this was available, she could have sat down, pretending this is her topic, and said, well, you know what? First, I want to have a lesson plan or a unit plan. So I'm going to click unit plan and generate. And then over on the right side, I almost think that this is faster than ChatGPT sometimes. So it's going to generate my unit plan. So we have standards, learning objectives, lessons by lesson breakdown, a closure. Then we have the sequence, and it just keeps going, going, and going. And just thinking about how much time, because other people said, lesson plans, and some of the comments here in my survey are how to save time planning lessons, creating activities, guidance on prompting. And so what I could do is if that wasn't the best prompt, oh, don't go back. I could enhance that prompt. I could add more to it. I don't have to take that as it is. It just creates it really quickly. So if I'm like, all right, well, that's great. Well, now I want a lesson plan. So then I'm going to hit generate, and back at the top, it's going to take that same objective and generate a lesson plan. Now, what you can do once it's generated is you can change anything in there, the timing of it, anything about it is definitely not a problem. Oh, the grades also in this part, you could say, you could tell it specifically like these students are in the 7th grade. And then it would kind of get rid of the grade 6 to 8 band and focus it more to that. Like the more specific you are and the more you put into it, then it would create something more along those lines. Then if you think, okay, well, now I want students to do some type of a presentation maybe, or I need a presentation. So I want some real world examples. So I hit generate, and it's going to give the quest for new trade routes and the search for the Northwest Passage. And then if I want some group activities, you have all of these things, a Kagan list, model, a skit dialogue, round robin, debate. I click debate. So you could basically sit down and within, depending on how much you want created, 15 minutes, have your whole unit plan, lesson plans, everything written out, which not that it's the final product because you always want to go back and review it, but then have everything generated all in that one space, have the assessments added into that, and it's still generating and going, going, going. And you could add even more to it. So still going, and it breaks down tips, tools, reminders, optional. And if I want some administrative things, because some of the things you said in the comments were like for emails, if you want some behavioral interventions, you're working with IEPs, those types of things are already in here, but whatever you would create, it would base it off of that objective that you had listed initially. So if you wanted to switch to a different topic, you would want to start a new card. Um, Feedbacks, if you're giving feedback to students, the different assessments. So if you want an exit slip, same thing, you just generate it and it's going to go right back to the top and it's going to generate some type of ticket, exit ticket for you. And that's Eduade. And I could spend a ton of time on it, but it really is user friendly. It stores all of your outputs for you. You can rename them. You can export it into different things like a Word document. You can connect your Google Drive if you want to. And then the other thing, let me go here. It, you know, collapses. I almost say condenses so that it ends up being a very, very long, long stream because we've created a lot of things, but it really saves you a ton of time. And so when I asked you that question before with the cat and the puffy coat, what are some tasks? Could this be your tool? Could Almanac be your tool? Did you have presentations, unit plans, lesson plan, and assessment? Then you could go to Almanac if that's something new to you, or Eduade, and looking at prices and things, and it's free to try. So yeah, I really like it a lot. So that is Eduade. And then let me go to Diffit, because Diffit is another one of my favorites. I laugh every time I see the literally anything, but something newer with it is that they've changed like the layout of it. So it is very much like a Google format. It has been streamlined. And they also added the books feature, which is great. So if you are teaching books, they have these different books. If I pick A Boy Called Bat, you can choose multiple chapters. I've never read this book, but I'm just going to pick this one. English, I have no idea what grade. I'll just say 9th grade. You can align it to different ELA standards or any different standards. I'll leave that go for now. Other options, so it could be in pages or slides. I'm going to leave it in pages and generate. So the fun thing about Diffit is that you can type in a topic. It could be roller derby. It could be the exploration we just had. It could be photosynthesis like I always use. And it will generate a variety of activities, text, vocabulary, which you see here. So now we have this book and we have the text, which is quite long. Now, with that, because we're thinking of differentiation, which is the name Diffit, and accessibility, you can modify the reading by removing information, rewriting with certain words, including more detail. You could tell it what you want it to include. You can also change the reading length. So depending on the age of your learners, and again, differentiation, wanting it to be a shorter or a custom length, that's something you could do. Or you can even change the activity to something else, which is over here on the other side. So maybe while the students, let me enlarge this, are reading, and even though this says gravity, it would, if you put this in, it would move it back to the bat. But it has the reading here, but then it has on the side. So as the students are reading, they're taking notes. Or it's paragraph by paragraph. So they read it and then they have to summarize it. So they're not just reading something, it's very interactive. And the new functionality of this is I can still scroll down like I could before. They have vocabulary, I can add vocab. But over here on the right, because it's like Google Documents, I could just skip to that specific part of this activity. So it took that book and generated all of these different things that fast. Think pair shares, you get students collaborating, they get some drawing, and you can change any of these things as you can see. And then there are different activities at the bottom. And some of the ones I really like are like this key vocab. So they have the word sanctuary, they get the definition, and then now you have to use it in a sentence and then draw something to represent it. So it's that like repetitive process of learning and practicing the word, but in a way that's more authentic and meaningful. And so Diffit is great because it's not so much that it's like lesson plans, but it's what you would use in your lesson. And going to my own resources, I have a ton of them from roller derby championship. I did this one the other day when I was doing a PD session, and I mean it was on point. It had key vocab, it had other activities, things I learned, multiple choice. It was just a very funny thing, and you can always adjust and change anything there. You can open it into all of these different formats. It does connect with Google Classroom. You can convert it into Google Forms, download it and print it, any of those things, or just share the link. But with students, you can create this and give it to them in any of those formats and they can interact with it, and it creates it that quickly. So that's one of the reasons I really, really like Diffit. Thank you, Patrick, for putting that in there. So that is Diffit. Now, let me, oh, I was reading, yeah, it is a phenomenal tool. So let's see, with the time that is left, well, one thing I want to share, let me drop this link into the chat here. If I pick the right chat, give me 1 second. This is something that is newer to me. I learned about this in San Diego when I was at the ASU GSV AI Summit. And it is a company called SchoolinOne. And I share this in all sessions just because I, like many other educators, when we go into school, we have a lot of different systems. We have, our gradebook and attendance system. Maybe there's a calendar, maybe there's a place for behavior, then there's a place for assessments, and then there's resources. And so we're using a lot of different materials, a lot of, I call it like the multiple click-in system. So I like to share this one and tell people that in your school, if you are using a lot of those different tools, it streamlines all of those into like SchoolinOne. It's an all-in-one platform. I have tested it out and looked at the different things that it offers. And it's something that teachers and families, guardians, students can use, can interact, can ask questions with. I did meet with one of their co-founders, who's actually from Chile, and we had a great conversation. I asked a lot of different questions about it. And so I have just been sharing it because I hear from a lot of educators that like, we have to click into so many different things, and this might be something that might be beneficial for your school. So if it is, you can feel free to email me, or I have access, I can connect you to get like a quick like a 20-minute meeting, a demo. A couple of my friends did the demo and they were like, wow, that's really amazing with like the language translation and everything that's offered with it. So that's just like a quick little extra that I want to throw in there. But the last one, I guess for now, and I have a ton of resources that I can share. When I do some of these sessions, I've done 7 hour. Tomorrow, I'm actually doing a 6 hour for world language educators, all on AI. So it's a great week. And I'm going to share Note. I learned about them a few months ago, and I actually saw them at ISTE. People mentioned School AI, and actually, let me pause for 30 seconds before I show this one. So if for you, on your list, you want to use AI in your work to create all of the different things that you have to create and to save you time. And you also want to put it into the hands of your students so they learn how to use it in responsible ways that are enhancing learning and see it as like a supporter. Then the tools that I would recommend would be School AI, because you got the teacher tools, and then you can give them a sidekick. They can talk with a famous character from history. You have all of that in that space, and it's monitored by you. It can be flagged, but it always comes down, if you're creating it, to the prompting. Or I would say Magic School, because Magic School has for teachers and they have the students and the same options. Brisk, of course, have content that you can create, and they have the boost activity. So you can take that YouTube video and the students just scan the code and engage in a conversation after viewing the video, and it helps them to learn. If you are looking for something just for you to do the lesson plans, the presentations, some assessments, maybe some games, and you want enough, but you don't want too much, then I would pick Almanac. And if you like the different activities and the Google Diffit, I mean, I think with all of these, none of them take a lot of time to get started with, and having knowledge of what each of them does. And there's even another one, Snorkel, that's my favorite. I've used that for almost 2 years with students speaking into it, and not enough time to show you that one today. But this one, since nobody out of my survey respondents had heard of it, it's Note. And it does offer a lot of the same types of tools that the other platforms have. So as I scroll here, you got writing feedback, a professional email we had mentioned, generating a rubric, lesson plans are on here, generating worksheets, discussion prompts, icebreakers, text translators, which I'm a little bit careful with. But if you are working with students and sending information to families, then you definitely want to be able to have that option, that feature, so that everybody gets the information. Recommendation letters, again, careful with personally identifiable information. I'm writing a letter about student A that's involved in, and you don't even have to name the sports because you never know, and some qualities, characteristics. I never say like he or she. I just keep like everything out that I possibly can. They attend a school, because I can always fill that in later. But with Note, yep, you can also build your own GPT. Yes, you can. I have done that as well, and it's a lot of fun to do. So with this, with the different tools, you can, there's a time machine tool, which is kind of fun. So you can refresh the time period of any word, problem, or story. You can create some different flashcards, different emails, and let me see if one of mine comes up here. So I made a worksheet on just two verbs, and you see the functionality, and they have an assistant. So we have Raina with Magic School, we have Erasmus with Eduade, and you got Kai here. So I could ask Kai anything, how to make this worksheet better, but I'm not going to do that now. But it has different questions, open-ended, and then some other notes. And it's like, use visuals to differentiate between them. Like, oh, that's great. Gives me some ideas of what to do. And then if I want to create something really quickly, if I did a lesson plan, then I would give it a standard or objective. I'll just say, I'm going to say fractions again, grade level, third grade, and then 20 minutes, no other criteria. Okay, it looks great. Generate. And it's cute because you see a little Kai there, get some exercise, working on, saving time for you, sweating, and it gives you something, while you're waiting for that time. But it will generate what you need, but you can always go in and change it. And so here we have, and it's preview only because you are able to change it. And it gives me some key points, total time, independent practice, a closing, an extension, and some homework, and then standards align. You know what? I think this is great. So it's mathematics. And if I create it, then it's going to ask me, where do you want this to live? Do I have a class set up? Can anybody use this? And I'll just put it in Spanish too. Why not? Not that I'm going to teach them about fractions, but you have all of these different things that then students can also do. So I think it's something new. Those two, that SchoolinOne and Note, KNOWT, and I'll drop that link into the chat as well. And I'm going to go back to my end screen here. just if anybody does have questions, and I wasn't kidding when I said I have a lot of slides. There we go. I'll put that on the screen. So you can send me an email. It's just the rdene915@gmail. And on socials, it's the same thing on LinkedIn. So if you have questions, and I do thank you for completing my survey. I love seeing where people are joining in from across the country and in different beautiful places like the Virgin Islands. That's amazing. And different roles in education. So if I can help you with anything, please let me know. Like I said, I do a lot of training, individual training, which has been great. I've been working with individual teachers on AI and some specific tools, which is a lot of fun. And then, of course, school-wide and at conferences. And just, I love what I do. I love being in my classroom and I love working with educators and getting to connect with all of you today. So thank you for being here. And Nicole, I think I'm right on time, I think. And
I'm
Paige, let's
here. I'm
see.
here. Okay.
Oh, no, you're good.
Okay, thank you so much, Rochelle. It was great having you. And I'm sure a lot of people are maybe a little overwhelmed, but we'll go through AI from a computer science perspective as well, which will help us understand a
Yeah.
little bit more about how AI works. But of course, these resources are all really great, and I'm sure some of them will be quite helpful for, speeding up the process for maybe some not so fun things. But at the core of it, you just have to know that all of these tools pretty much all come from OpenAI or Gemini or those type of things. It's just the packaging of the API to make it look better, and so it's easier for the end user. But if you really wanted to, you can actually just get all of that stuff from, ChatGPT and actually create your own, so it's completely aligned with what you want. So yeah, Rochelle will definitely love to have any of the resources you have to share. And I don't know, any last questions for her before we let her go?
Before you let me go and then I come back
Oh
in
yeah, and then you come back
an
again.
hour. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I don't have to talk too much today. You guys are lucky, and I get to do other stuff like plan what I'm going to talk about this afternoon.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so let me drop this into the chat. So when you get this, this document is actually 11 pages and it's more streamlined. Should be the right one. Oh, wait, hang on one second. Make sure that's the same. It's do the second one because the first one might ask for permission. But it has all the links. It has way more than what I covered, but a lot of those tools, it has organizations, it has some articles and things like that that you can look at if you're so inclined. It has that School-in-One, and I have the link there if somebody does want to set up a meeting to talk with Mati. He's great to talk to and to learn about. I see a lot of anonymous platypus and buffalo and badgers joining in a blobfish. So I see that you're all there, but lots of things in there to check out. So thank you, Nicole, and I'll see you all in a little bit.
Yep, sounds great. Well, thank you so much. And I guess to kind of tease for today. So today I'm really excited because let's see if I could share a little bit. Let's go down below. But I know we have some people who are familiar with using AI tools, but we're going to do a little bit of prompt engineering today and learning how to prompt engineer properly. Because what we know from AI tools is that a lot of times the output of what is given to us in a lesson plan may not necessarily be as in-depth or as like it's not as good as if an expert were to do it, because simply the nature of AI, which it'll just spit out the most generic stuff, that is okay. So if you're teaching just basic information or you just want to do really quick slides, it's great. I do it all the time. But if you want to go sometimes more in depth or have a better understanding of the topic yourself, then those forward-facing platforms won't necessarily respond in that way because they're not built for those purposes. So in that case, you can actually build your own or prompt the OpenAI or GPT for the results that you want. And it's also just cheaper if you also get a development tool. So you pay like, what, $10 and you get like 2,000 something prompts or something. So it's pretty interesting. So we're gonna wait a little bit for, I think Victor Hicks is Coach Victor Hicks from yesterday will be joining in shortly. I'm just gonna send a message to them. But in the meantime, we're gonna take a break. So you guys are free to go grab a coffee before we have our second speaker come on in.
Hello, hello. You're on mute, Nicole.
Nicole, you're still on mute.
Still muted, friend.
Yeah, Coach, she's got two devices going on, so
Yeah.
Listen,
Okay.
I try to do that for my classes. I have failed miserably. The two devices.
I have two
listen.
Zoom instances and my microphone, and usually one of them is on mute.
Oh, so you had a third device. So yeah, you really were being advantageous.
Okay.
About
pull up
one
my
more
slides.
minute and then everybody should be back.
Okay.
I was disappointed I didn't get to see you in Cleveland.
I was so sad. When I tell you I am so tired of adulting, like it is like, yeah.
Listen,
I
good that you're
wanted to be
busy.
there. Yeah,
Oh,
I mean it's been a good summer, but it's been so busy. Like it has just been so many things going on. I mean, like I said, good things, but coding with culture is just me. So like when we get busy, I get busy.
Tell me about it.
listen,
Yeah, Fred,
listen,
you understand. Listen,
if
that solo entrepreneurship life is people are like, oh, it's so good. You get to stay. I said, I listen every day. I'm like, okay, how much do I love doing this? Why don't I just go
it's
to, well, right.
good to be busy.
It is. It is. It is. Especially doing the good work. I feel like, if it's meaningful work, as frazzled as we may get, it's still, you know.
Absolutely. I just thought I was going to learn how to dance. I only have two left feet, and no.
Now,
I was
I'm a coach,
looking.
Paige, so just say word. We can set up some. And I was so sad because my presentation in Cleveland was my dance and coding presentation.
I
And I was
know
like,
I
that's
was supposed to be I was going to be your proctor. I was all set.
I'll see Paige. Well, okay, well, no, we'll have to set we'll have to go, what's coming up. We can do Q. We can do fall Q or
If not, I'll wait for New Orleans.
What's in
oh,
New
I'm not
Orleans?
missing that. Now that
Yeah, CSTA next year is in New Orleans. I know one of our
Oh,
participants here said they were in New Orleans.
maybe I
They
can actually
mentioned
go to
that early
something.
this morning.
yeah, so you can come.
One day.
Tracy's in New Orleans. So
But you could have a table.
Do you know how much those things cost? I don't got the money for that.
yeah. Well,
We'll see what we
I
can.
presented elementary, I think at ISTE one year and at CSTA one year.
Yeah, it was in
It
my
might have
presentation
even been
last year.
yeah. So
So you
maybe
represented.
that
You got
calls for next year.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll just
maybe
go and
again next
support
year.
because I can't present anything. They're like, you're a
No,
vendor. You go get a table. I'm like, okay, well. I guess I won't go. That's
But
fine.
I think they can though, right? I thought if as long as you say right or like
She can co-present with me, but she can't,
I can't
with the
do a
teacher, but
proposal.
she
Yeah.
can't. Yeah.
oh, okay.
I
Well,
think
you got
even if
two
you
of us.
co-present, they don't really like it that much. Yeah.
Okay.
Like you can pay other people to present about you, but you can't present yourself.
No. You can't even pay them. They can't be paid presenters. It has to
Yeah.
be somebody who's in the, either in the
In the field.
classroom
Oh yeah, but they
or
don't pay,
professional development.
but
Right. But ISTE's different though, right? ISTE you can send a paid rep, right? Like
Yes. However, you, as the person who's presenting, you have to pay to present. So like when I presented ISTE, I had to pay to attend ISTE.
uh-huh.
And even though I was presenting, whereas CSTA, you get to attend for free. There's no conference fee if you're a
Okay.
presenter.
Gotcha.
But if anybody here is interested in being a presenter, you guys got great ideas. I'm the elementary strand lead, so proposals open up in a couple of weeks. So definitely something
also,
to think about. Yeah,
yeah, for what was it? The one in Texas. We teach CS.
we teach
ETCS.
CS. Yep.
Yeah, so if anybody wants to present anything with elementary for We Teach CS, the We Teach CS people are all for that. And I talk to them, and they're like, this is so great. And I'm like, well, we'll see if I can actually
I
go.
just presented there. I usually
Yeah.
present. I can do it if you need somebody. I'll
Yeah,
do it.
I talked to two
Yeah.
people from there, and they were
Did you
like, yeah,
talk
this
to
is good.
Alan?
I don't remember.
Yeah. Coach
So We
Alan
Teach
Antoine is the.
CS doesn't pay, but they hopefully will have the funding so you don't have to pay for your own board, I think, was it? You don't have to
Yeah,
pay for
they reimbursed
yeah, they
reimburse our flights
reimburse. They're
and
the only yeah, they're the only like conference that actually reimburses you. Everything else you have to pay for, even if you're a
yeah.
presenter.
Right. Yeah. That's it. The We Teach CS is through the University of Texas at Austin. So they have a great conference.
Yeah. It was pretty cool. I enjoyed it. Idea is another nice one. If you're a featured speaker, you can go
Mm.
to I think Idea pays for everything, but then if you present, you don't pay to go. Like it's just, Georgia's like that too.
The Georgia
GAETC.
Constellations.
No. The our
No.
GAETC, Georgia Educational Technology Conference. The Constellations one too, but yeah, this is a separate GAETC is its own organization. I think they're not related, they're not connected to any of our universities. I know Constellations, I think it's Georgia Tech.
Okay. Right.
But yeah, I mean it's a pretty cool pro. It's one of the better. They do a very good job of having really diverse topics and everything from physical computing to they really do a good job. That's one of the few that does a good job of balancing computer science, I think, in ed tech. Usually it's kind of, but yeah, I just wish I got to travel for it. I'm like, they're like, yeah, Vic, you can come. I'm like, yeah, 'cause it's not even a hotel room for me. So, but
Right.
do you want to give people a couple minutes or
I think we should be good on the time.
okay. All righty. I will pull up my slides. Let's see. Make sure I have the right thing open. Okay, here we go. Ready? Present.
Are you able to share your screen?
Yeah, I'm getting ready. So I was make sure I have the right
Okay.
thing.
Yeah. I just want to make sure you have access.
Oh, okay, yeah. No worries.
Okay.
Let me check right now. So we are good to go. Share. Yep, I got it. Oh, no, send request. Okay.
Nicole, you might have to make
Right.
Coach
There you go.
co-host. Okay.
Okay. And now, okay.
Perfect. We can see.
Okay. But are you seeing, I've been trying to get Canva to get, can you see my speaker notes too, or is it just presenting the slides?
I think we see the speaker notes as well.
Okay. That's what I was trying to avoid, but if necessary, we can just go a little old school. We will be okay. All right. Well, we will go ahead and get started. Let me go ahead and exit out of the notes. We'll just do a regular presentation. All righty. All right. We good? Everybody can see everything okay?
We are perfect.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. I'm happy to be here with you guys. You've heard we are longtime fans here at Coding with Culture of Elementary, and so we were very honored to be asked to present today on a topic that is very near and dear to why I founded Coding with Culture and kind of our purpose and our mission. So today we're going to talk a little bit about coding our stories and ways that our computer science classrooms can become more culturally responsive and relevant. And so the person talking to you about this today is myself. My name is Victor Hicks. I am the proud founder of Coding with Culture. We are an organization that is looking to build a kindergarten through HBCU pathway in computational, and design thinking. And our idea is not only to help to diversify the tech world, but also build to begin to give access to students who tend to naturally possess a lot of the creative genius that you cannot teach. And so our idea and what I've learned during my time in the classroom, especially in the computer science classroom, is that it's often, many times, majority of the time, not lacks of talent, but just lack of access. And so we work actively to disrupt some of the systems that are in place. And so a little bit about me, I've been teaching for a total of 25 years. The last 6 years have been working, or excuse me, 10 years in computer science as I relocated to Atlanta public schools. And in that time, quickly realized that computer science and access to it was a equity issue. And so eventually, a few years down the road, that led to me moving into the consultancy space full time. Started Coding with Culture. We work with students in one-on-one or small group coding classes, teachers like yourselves in professional development settings like this, and also partnering with schools and youth groups to provide those culturally responsive computer science experiences, workshops, camps. So originally from Chicago, Illinois, currently a resident of Atlanta, Georgia. And I am a proud product of not one, but two HBCUs. So I started out at Fisk in Nashville, Tennessee, and then moved on to Clark Atlanta, where I graduated with a degree in health and physical education, which, fun fact, the one class I've never taught is PE. So the Coach Hicks comes from a long time being a step coach. If you all are familiar with the fraternity and sorority traditions of stepping, I coached the youth teams, which is where HBCUs really started to become a part of my day-to-day pedagogy. So excited to talk to you guys about some ways we can bring culture into our CS classrooms or classrooms, period. All right. Now, hopefully Canva cooperates. My arrows never. Okay. So what we'll do today, we want to look at what culturally responsive coding and storytelling means. We want to dispel some of the rumors or talk about some of the things that culturally responsive teaching and learning is, and some of the things that it's not, or some of the constraints that it's not bound by. Looking at some of the frameworks and classroom strategies that I've used to kind of help implement some of these practices into my classroom. We'll see a very cool real world example that was created by two people on this call, and ways that you can also incorporate elementary into your teaching practice using culturally responsive practices. We're going to think about your students' identity and brilliance, challenge you guys to think about, to break out of the box of some of our traditional ideas of culture. And then we're going to look at trying AI design. I know you guys came out and we'll be hearing from some more experts on AI, but I want us to think of ways that we can go in and try to create our own prompts. And that will leave you with a lesson hook for your very own culturally responsive lesson. Any questions on the agenda? All right. And then if you guys have questions, I think Paige is managing the chat. And I'll pause every so often to make sure we are good to go. So when we think about what does it mean for our students to see ourselves in the code. And so I want to go and say the first thing, and I want to lead with this because of its importance, is that our students are very good judges of intentionality. We talked about this during our panel yesterday. And one of the things that I realize is that it needs to come from a place not of expertise, but of genuine concern and care and wanting to learn and grow with your students. So again, we talk about culture, it doesn't necessarily just include race. And I think that's the pink elephant in the room, that when we talk about culturally responsive teaching, we don't want to box ourselves into rate or ethnicity, right? So our students, whether they are from rural areas, suburban areas, big cities, if they are, socioeconomic status, we talk about, I know one thing that sticks out, especially in the learning space, are students that are in K-8, K-12 post and during the pandemic, because their learning styles, because of, you know, learning virtually, and again, not necessarily looking at it from a deficit model, but those are all very different pockets of culture. So again, if your teacher says, well, hey, I don't really teach too many students of color, how does culturally responsive teaching apply to me? Well, if you teach anyone that's alive on the planet Earth, they have a part of culture. So again, even just, teenagers, if you teach middle school, I'm sure my fellow middle school teachers understand they are very well a culture of their own, and so again, we think about how we identify with our students. We want to start where they are. And again, that can be the millions of things that make up the person that shows up to your class each day. We really want to talk about voice forward. I know a lot of times teachers that are non-people of color, sometimes they feel it's hard or uncomfortable to kind of start those genuine questions, or coach, how do I ask these questions responsibly? And I think the beautiful part in that is that you allow those students to lead that part of the lesson. I think the great benefit or the side effect of it is that you also get to learn some really cool things about the people that sit in front of your classroom every day. And so again, I think inviting the storytelling, allowing students to, really coming out of that. And again, I'm an old school teacher, been doing it for a while. So one of the biggest growth points for me was, getting out of that being the sage on the stage, or having to feel like I had to be the expert on everything. So, even for me, I had to realize as an African American teacher, even in an all Black classroom, my students still brought many different, a myriad of diverse experiences, even within Black culture, that when I allowed them to take that lead. So again, I mean, I wouldn't say, don't do it, because again, intentionality is big. And I'll say the thing, the children will definitely call you out if they feel like, it's not coming from the right place. But again, it's a conversation. Sometimes I put curriculum to the side and say, okay, well, again, it's not to the side because it's eventually going to be a part of their lesson. But I think that's how you allow students, as a teacher, you get the experience and background of your students, but also allows your students to gain that voice that is so important. We talk about empowering students to learn and to lead. And last but not least, including my my non-debugged slide deck, we want to make sure that it's purposeful. So I think one of the things that I've done as a teacher, the first 6 years, I loved, the gamified approach to code for K-5. My kids loved it. We were Angry Birding and Minecrafting and all the things, and we were coding down from K-5. And then as my kids started to progress to middle school, now we're entering Ear Sketch. Now we're entering Python. Now we're in these pathways where you actually have to and I'm not gonna say the pseudocode is coding. Shout out to my elementary teachers, but it's not fun anymore. I mean, let me not say that. It becomes hard. Syntax becomes an issue. Like, paragraph. I mean, so many different things. And so what I was finding is that we weren't building sustainable pathways. We were igniting the flame. And I think, I'm so thankful for code.org, hours of code that were out there when we first started. But what I realized is that could not be the end all be all. Kids were not connecting to the next level. And also they weren't seeing outside of the gamified world of code. Because as you start to build apps or songs or, whatever the different platforms offer, they don't use, unfortunately, I wish if they do, let me know. There's no Minecraft in those coding platforms. So again, looking at ways that we can making sure that our kids are learning the skill, And so I think that's one of the things I love about elementary is that where it does give you the pseudocode, kids see a very realistic end to the product. So I'm not just learning about loops just arbitrarily. I'm learning about loops because this is going to help my game do this. Or we use functions in, an app because it allows our app to move more efficiently. So I think for me, it's the best of both worlds because as fun as we want to make it, as much as we want to inspire communities of kids, it's like I think it's even worse, rug pulled out from up under you if we send them into the world not prepared. So yes, do we want more Black and brown children in coding? Absolutely, but we need them to be prepared. So making sure that those culturally relevant experiences are culturally connected, but also rigorous and also meaningful. So we're going to look at a brief, you have to hear me run my mouth the whole time, clip on culturally responsive teaching. We're only going to watch a few minutes of this. Actually, let me see if it'll play right. Ours. Oh no, I think it'll. Okay.
Intent, I mean, is
No.
to
Dealing through. Okay, so we'll pivot from that. And we'll think about some frameworks that we use in computer science. And we think about like how do we bring culturally responsive teaching into the classrooms. And again, I'll center it around computer science to an extent, but realizing we probably have teachers, these apply across the discipline. So for me, as I realized again, coming into computer science and realizing that it was, not something I just wanted to present on the surface. I wanted this to be meaningful to my students. I wanted them to see how community connected to these skills. And so in my research, found and became a definite fanboy for Dr. Goldie Muhammad. If you teach, I won't even just say Black and brown children, if you teach any children, definitely read her work. The thing that I love about it is that her work is all centered. I'll say will pull me in. And then now, like I said, I'm sure she probably thinks I'm absolutely nuts every time she sees me, but she centers her work in joy. And I think that is one of the things in the world of testing and, all the things that, again, we definitely need, but I think a lot of those have really pushed out or squeezed out the ability to center joy. And we think about our population, our customers, our focus group, our target audience, our children. And at the center of childhood should be joy. And so that was one of the things that I loved about her work. And so basically, when we think about when you start to ask how you implement these things, these are kind of some checkpoints you can use as you start to introduce these types of lessons. So identity, of course, challenges your students to think who they are, and who are we as the collective group. And again, I think that's important as we talk about culturally responsive computer science, because it's also good to hear what the students think without being prompted first. So I would say even the same question I pose of you guys, or will in a second, what do you think of when you think of community? That was one of the things I had up on the board for my students. And so from there, as they went to go through this project, their idea of community guided their work because they were presented with just a very general task. Hey, you have to do something to help a part of a community or to help a community that you are a part of. You definitely, again, I am again, the old school teacher comes out. I'm a fan of rigor. I want learning to be fun, but I want kids to learn. So very clear about kids having skill. Another shout out to elementary that I love, like within each level, and we'll take a look at a lesson in a second. It talks about the skill that the kids are having. So there's, for many of the lessons, and the thing is, well, also differentiated. So you can set up the lessons based on experience, which is important. Kids have access to the vocabulary. So again, definitely speaks to this model because the kids need to know what they're learning. So we're not just throwing characters or sprites on the screen and making them do cool things. This is how these actual hard, tangible computer science skills are being learned and then practiced. The intellect, why is it important? So I think, this generation, as we talk about communities, I'll call them our post-pandemic babies. They are very much, I call them, well, the Missouri babies. Show me, why is this important? And I think it challenges a lot of the ways that education was, or as educators, we are used to. But we also have to be mindful that we are no longer educating children for the Industrial Revolution. We are heavy into the information age, the digital age. And so now we need to think about making sure the kids understand the importance and the practicality and the purpose in what they're learning. Criticality. So for me, I'm a big proponent of kids using technology as justice. So why is this important? How can we use technology to challenge a an issue? And I will say, to be completely transparent, I've grown in education, I say play with that a little bit as far as using that consistently, because again, we talk about joy. I want kids to know that computer science can be used to solve problems or address hunger and or housing challenges, etc. But I also want kids to realize that it can be strictly for creating, and there's importance in creating art. It's important to talk about culture. And so when we think about that word injustice, I struggle with, because I think the criticality can also be simply presenting or exposure to other cultures or to whatever content the students are consuming. And last but not least, the biggest part, of course, is joy. We want to think about how we celebrate and uplift others. So as the kids are presenting, as the kids are sharing their work, how are ways that we can continue to celebrate them in that work? And so when we talk about culturally responsive teaching, oftentimes we think about the books or the hard copies, the things that the kids can see, the tangible things, making sure those are reflecting our children's culture, but also realizing that there's pedagogy behind that. So we think about how do we, teenagers, who would have ever known that they would go as crazy for stickers that they do? That is a very real part of the culture in my classroom. And so my high school children will walk around, of course, with stickers all over their faces. Bless them. But they are also, again, that's, as a teacher of teenagers, that is my responsibility to teach to the group that I'm teaching. And so that is something that is a part of our classroom culture. Again, maybe not as big or as broad as, ethnicity or things like that, but it's a very real part of the children that show up into my classroom every day. And so bringing those stickers is a very small way, albeit, you know, but it celebrates joy. And I think in this world that is forcing our kids to grow up so quickly, that's important. And so how do we do it? So again, Coach Hicks is all about practicality. This is my sports background comes in. How do we do this, right? How do we make these things? Because again, how do I come off of the kind of modulated, or even make the modulated coding programs make sense to my kids? And I think this is where I use and encourage other teachers to use design thinking in that computer science classroom, or in the computer science space within the classrooms or the CS integration, excuse me, in the classrooms that you guys are teaching in. And so really looking at starting out with, for me, the thing I love about design thinking over engineering design is that empathy. And I think a big part of these young people's lives is like, hey, in this TikTok generation of everything, being 15 seconds and that's it. Or, I call it the reality TV show culture, where we're dealing with, the culture of babies that we're teaching are being pushed into these messages of, whoever can be the most abrasive or the most argumentative. And so I think it's also important in educating the whole child that we specifically give them opportunities to think about other people, because so many of our children, because they're in this technology bubble, right? We talk about digital citizenship. A part of that is in real world practice, teaching that, like, hey, you know what, think about the next person when you do this. CSTA was huge for me because, as you see, I love, fancy slides, and never thought about harming anyone else, but it was somebody to kind of tap me on the shoulder and say, hey, here's another point of equity that you think about. So again, thinking that important that we shape people, shape our creators as we build these tech geniuses to also be empathetic. So I would say, there's a way, Nicole has an amazing design app. I think you guys are doing that later on as one of your courses. And so starting out with hey, who are we building this app for? Our kids do a design an HBCU app, but we start out with who needs to learn about HBCUs. So are you creating an app for alumni that are coming back to campus? Are you creating a admission site? So they really have to start thinking about how they can be effective for that group. So define, really having the kids sit and think about what problem are they solving, and how is this game, song, app, website, how is this addressing the need? And so this was, I think I love the app this particular platform because the kids get both. So they don't get stuck kind of in these, modules where they're doing this and then you're like, hey, now build this app. They're going through all of them at very different times. So in the beginning, they have to it has them narrow. And I would say, even if you're designing your own thing, same thing, make sure that they are focusing in on what it is exactly that they're supposed to get from this project. Because what will happen a lot of times with project-based learning around design thinking is it kind of gets lost. So I say lost in the sauce because they start doing these really cool things and they're like, okay. And then you're like, hey, it's time to present your apps. And even though they were engaged, all of a sudden it becomes crisis time because no one has finished anything. And that is a computer science rookie mistake that I've made so that you don't have to ever make that. So make sure that the kids are working on a very specific purpose. It's a great side lesson in design thinking because constraints are a part of design. So that's a great way to give them that real world experience, and also not drive yourself crazy in the process. So then have them ideate. I think it's important there that you tell students as they're creating these things, that it's interesting. And again, going back to our students' particular culture, meaning the generational, I guess, or age groups, is that they have a very hard time with things that are not right or wrong or black and white, right? Like, so if it's not an immediate feedback, is this answer right or wrong? So ideating, where I feel like what I've experienced a shift in as an educator is that these students are not, they're imaginative, but they're almost looking for, feedback on everything. So like a kid, I remember telling kids to brainstorm an app, and every time they wrote something down, I'm like, is this it, Coach Hicks? Is this right? Is this okay? So I think for the ideating that I love, again, we talk about, really pushing our kids in some of the soft skills is that just, letting that think, create. There is no right or wrong here. It's just you're trying to come up with as many creative ideas as you can. So I think that's A, it helps them in the project, but B, that's a life skill that helps them too. Of course, for us coders, the heavy part comes in with the prototyping. That's when they're actually building the idea. So, life hack for me, what I do, I tend to, if I do use the modular computer science programs, we may take a chunk of, loops, and then they somehow apply loops to whatever their project may be. So, computer science skill, teach. Now again, not to continue to sing the praises of elementary, but you get all of that in one punch there because the kids are learning. There's clear steps where they're, like I said, the definition, the vocabulary. I think they can click on it, Nicole, right? If I'm right or wrong, most they have like the word as many times as possible, like the loops, right? In some of the lessons. I think so. If she's on mute.
Sorry.
No.
I'm here again.
I know you told me it was your break. I wasn't gonna pick on you. I said, let me make sure I don't tell these people anything that is not correct. Because they can click the vocabulary words in the lessons, right?
Yes.
Like
So we have all the coding concepts embedded, and if it's not embedded, then it needs to be embedded. So there are some things I think someone brought up, the set position is kind of confusing. So like all of the core CS concepts are supposed to be embedded within the lesson, so that they can click on it to open it up, listen to it with the read to me if they want to. But mostly it's to support those teachers who may not be computer science teachers, so that if they wanted to include those things and those vocabulary and concepts, they can, and it's there for them.
Yep. So to me, again, it gives the best opportunity for both because it's also like, and again, this is the old school teacher coming out, like there has to be a teaching part of it. Like I don't think it necessarily has to be a full 30-minute lecture from me. But also you have to be careful not to make the kids' computer science experiences, especially if you're integrating it into another subject, too field trippy is what I say, because then kids don't, it's like we did this really cool thing and then 10 minutes later they can't tell you anything about it. Like, I have this app. What did you do? I don't know. So you want to make sure that again, within that prototyping, that there are, I would say as a teacher, that's where you would want them to see you. So like there would be, I would kind of use like a design workshop theme. Like I was the foreman or whatever it was. We kind of had like we called it, the water cooler meeting. So the kids would all come in, kind of find a seat. And again, that's where we kind of brought in that real world experience. So, but there was always a point where it was like, okay, hey, this is how, functions work. we were doing like one of the I think it was one of, I can't remember the lesson, but then the kids had to cut. So there was a mini lesson, all my, 10 minutes of, again, these children's attention span. But then they went about their groups. And of course, wherever they were in their project, they then started applying that new coding concept. So again, just an asterisk in that prototype, make sure that the kids are seeing those computer science concepts as they're applying them. Last but not least, another post-pandemic babies interesting point is that they have a very hard time with this try it out phase, because what we say, it's not right or wrong, it's not a pass or fail like a test or a score, it's you got to go back to the drawing board. And so what I used to take for granted, saying, okay, like try again, you that had to be specifically modeled and taught. And so again, it's not only something that will help them in the completion of their project or whatever they're working on with in your classroom. That's also a life skill we want to build in this culture. To again talk about the many cultures that exist in our classroom. We know that this is something where they struggle. So computer science or CS integration, STEM, these are great ways to get them to do really cool things, but also solidify some of these life skills like, hey, it's okay to fail. One of my biggest interests when a kid were the tears when the puzzles wouldn't work, like the debugging lesson in when I tell y'all the stress of the children, and it was simply because I'm sure Paige can attest as a fellow elementary person, like not being able to be right stressed them out. Like they could not wrap it. And I'm like, y'all, the whole message, the whole lesson is failing. Like I remember it was really like a whole like SEL moment. And I'm talking from K to 5. Like, of course, the babies I expected a little bit, but kindergartners want to be the big kids, so they'll hold back the tears. My fifth graders they couldn't believe it. They were like, well, Miss Jackson, I did it 2 10. I said, you might have to do it 5. Well, I did it 5 times. Okay, well, guess what? So, but again, as we know, as we prepare them to be members of society, productive members of society, we want to change that. And so I think too, communicating is important. I think sometimes we forget the importance of children being able to talk around computing, to be able to communicate what they did. And so I know a lot of times as teachers, as we are pressed for time, we forget the importance of those presentations. And I think when we talk about classroom culture, the more that you pour into those celebrations, again, going back to that connection to joy, and I mean things like if they're doing app design, have a Shark Tank. Hey, you gotta create a I actually did it in Catholic school, so it applies. They had to build an app about a saint. And so then as they pitched it, they then were like a business. So we did a whole entrepreneurship lesson, they did logos, and then the parents came in and voted in this Shark Tank. So again, and the 7th to 8th graders, I mean, they ate it up. They loved it. And so again, we talk about the connection to celebrate joy, but also, if I wouldn't say force, but it voluntold them to learn about the skills, because what the sharks were judging on were things like, hey, can you explain the mechanics behind this app? So it made them focus on, and again, also hold each other accountable about, okay, hey, what are we learning? So if Johnny struggled with the loops, we know that when we have our time to prepare for this presentation, it's a way to hold kids accountable. I think it's a great way when we talk about summative assessments without it having to be a pen and paper. But that's when you see how kids really get stuff. And again, they're learning how to work with others. They're doing all these great things. And then also they're learning, you check the skill because now they have to talk about it. So cool way to get that through as far as like the steps to incorporate that or to start that in your classrooms. And so for us, we take and combine a little bit more. Now, again, for us, I will say for culturally responsive teaching, a big part of our population with Coding with Culture are Black and Brown children. And so our organization, our why, our how, I guess, is built upon this HBCU framework. So again, depending on the students that you serve, that may or may not be. Now, again, I will definitely give the commercial. I think teaching about HBCUs is a great thing, no matter who you teach. But also realizing that you want your lessons to also be in your why to be rooted in your classroom's cultures or the cultures that are represented. So for us, we use a tool. We're very heavily rooted in Goldie Muhammad's work. But we look at HBCUs as not only ways to, as really cool content for kids to build things about, but also if we look at the history, and I won't get on my soapbox on that, but HBCUs have a history, a foundation in building students and growing students through the impossible. So when we talk about getting Black and brown students ready for careers like STEM and CS, how do we replicate some of the actual teaching, the pedagogy that goes on in these classrooms? So for us, identity, we make sure that our projects are grounded in self, community, and for us, Black history. So that would be where the variation would come in depending on the community. Again, the skill development. So making sure that in these projects, what we're teaching the kids, the CS concepts are very clear. So you want to make sure if you're doing an app design, are you teaching sequencing in that part? Are they learning loops, variables? Game design is a great way to teach that one. But you want kids to be able to talk about and to be able to conceptualize or grasp that a variable makes that score change happen. Or if my my app greets you by name, it's because this, and this. So even when we talk about AI, and students using AI, that's something where the communication part has to come back. Because yeah, you can prompt it all day, but if you can't tell me how you got that code to make that happen, so that's kind of one of those checkpoints too, to teach students to use AI for good. So not a complete fix, but also to the intellectual development. So making sure that the kids are engaging in those 21st century skills. Are they using critical thinking? Are they asking? Are they communicating? Is that inquiry there? Are they using creative? And when I say creativity, it's not just, digital art or artistic things. Are they looking at different ways of solving a problem? So I think that's another thing that you also push in your day-to-day check-ins as your kids are building their projects. How do we connect to those main points? So, okay, Johnny's group started off and they got a variable. They use variables to build this part of their app. Sarah's group used loops to what were the difference. And so as kids are communicating around the computing, they're also learning that creativity doesn't always have to be bottled into art class or dance class or what we consider the fine arts. I think computer science is art, but there's creativity in that problem solving. The criticality, so again, they use the word inequities here. I think for me, tech for justice can simply mean representation. We do a really cool unit. That's going to be my next preview. Nicole I'm probably going to be sick of me sending in lessons to her after attending PD this week. But we do the Black Superhero Project. So we talk about, it's not necessarily like, okay, we're helping the community overcome something, but we talk about the importance of representation in gaming. Why is it important for all kids or all young people to see themselves in video games or in cartoon characters or as heroes? So the criticality there is that it's just a celebration of identity, so it's not always approaching from the deficit mindset, because we also want our kids to realize it doesn't always necessarily have to be something bad to be something meaningful. So, and then other than that, again, I can't stress enough the joy. Our learning is loud. We have, the administrators of the buildings, I'm sure, cringe when they see me coming. They're like, okay, here we go again. Because it's going to be a show. Like, we're going to have a whole 9 yards of everything. And then, so you want to make sure that that's also rooted in the culture. So again, this is what we do at Coding with Culture. But it's also ways it's very easy for you to plug in the things that work for you and your school community. Because of course, everybody's not going to be working with the same group of children. Okay. And as I said, don't feel that even though a lot of what we do is rooted in ethnicity or, cultural, or I guess, ethnic background, that is not a stronghold or a stopping point for culturally responsive anything, because this could very well be the culture of 5-year-olds. Right? You're a kindergarten teacher. 5-year-olds have an identity, and so we have to make sure we tap into that. So again, culture in itself is diverse. And so with that, I want you guys to go into the chat, and I want you guys to think about our first talking point, if we want to have some people to come off of mute and page, you guys, if you all see any, I guess that they can use the hand raising thing, right? Okay. So if anyone, when we think about identity, what are some of the identities or cultures that are represented in your classroom? And if you support teachers or in administration, what are some of the in your school? And just think about, so you can kind of brain dump into the chat, or if you want to come off of mute, um, we can. I'm just curious to see, as we've talked about this, what are some of the communities that we're working with? And Paige, you can let me know if we have any. Oh, I can see the chat. Okay.
Yeah, before I forget, they also asked earlier if you're able to share your slides at the end.
I sure will. I absolutely will. Um,
If anybody wants to either come off a mute or stick it in the chat, either way is fine.
Okay, so Afro-Caribbean, African, Hispanic, Arab, and also too, you guys, I think one of the things we talked about this on our call yesterday for our one of our panels, and what we talked about was, the diasporan culture and how there's so many ways to tie in cultures that we haven't necessarily done a great job of connecting the dots. But that's another way to bring in, so that again, because I think it's also important. I meant to say that a little bit earlier, that as we present cultures, we also want to make sure that we're mindful of not allowing the spirit of dissent to pull into that. So it's not to polarize, and so again, making sure that in that conversation, in the wording that we're using, that it is, you know, in the spirit of unity, in the spirit of learning, in the spirit of, because it doesn't necessarily happen, but you want to make sure that students are understanding the why too. So we have a lot of different, large military culture. Okay. Somali culture, Turkish, Muslim, Latino. Okay. African American. So again, a lot of us are seeing, so Black, Latinx, immigrant, migrant. Okay. So yep. And position. Okay. All right. So the next question I want us to talk about before we go into, I do want to share actually, no, we'll do that first. So when we think about what it looks like in real classrooms, I wanted you guys to see, this is a lesson. We won't spend too long on it. But I did want you guys to kind of see how this ties in. So now that you've heard the why, we are looking at how this goes into practice. Now, I've used this with our second and third grade. So we've worked with summer camps, a group of kids that was about 7 or 8. You can also differentiate the lesson within, like you can set the levels for your students or the young people that you're working with. But also it ties into all of those 5 points. So the identity, the skills, the criticality, all those. So I will click here. All right. Can you guys see the lesson now? Did it switch over? I'm a Google Meet person. I always forget. Okay. So, and how am I doing on time? I'm done at 11:30 or 12:30 your time, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you have another 15 minutes. So if you want to leave 5 minutes for questions, we're good.
Okay. Keep me on time, Fran. Because I can run my mouth. All right. So this is the lesson that me and my awesome friend worked on. And it's about the different HBCUs. So of course, when we think about identity, I think it works in several ways. So again, we say, well, Coach Hicks, I like to address the pink elephant in the room. I don't teach Black students. How is this important? And I think my most famous step team of my tenure was a team at this Catholic school I taught here in Chicago. Every student on the team was Caucasian. And I mean, redhead, blonde. So we would go step. It was like, okay, where's the step team? We would walk in. But the kids were so rooted in the respect of the culture. So, because they saw Coach Hicks, and again, it wasn't like, we had to have this big sit down forum and, address racism and talk about why Black and white were different. they were just like, hey, this is a guy that is teaching us to do some really cool things, and look at this cool culture. And again, I can't tell you the times that I said, okay, we all aren't, I know this is not what you're doing, or you don't look like, hey, this is something really cool I can teach you. And so they grew up with such a respect for that. And so when I saw them, go on outside of my classroom into high school, they really started to see, when I saw their groups of friends or the things that they would, when their parents would communicate back and forth when they were going to college, I saw how the foundation was laid, and it wasn't, we were taking, having talking about the civil rights march, which of course is important, but again, why it's important to address these cultures, even if your students don't necessarily, come from that background. But anyway, we get off that soapbox. So we look at the identity, of course, is it is the HBCU. So it's teaching about Black history and culture. When we talk about career and college readiness, it ties into that. Also, when we think about, on a more diverse scale, American history, why were these institutions important, and why, what things did they help address in our society? So the skill comes in, of course, that's what is beautifully written, because the students actually go through and they learn about events. And so as a computer science teacher, I love the many lessons on sequencing and, but for me, I love to start teaching events. I just think it's a very good concept for kids to understand the kind of like the on off, the react, the yes no, the reactive nature of computer science, so that it kind of helps shape. So for me, I would say, now again, if you have a pathway that works for you, I don't want anybody to email say, Coach Hicks, you told me to do it. But as far as teaching, like the why, or I can't think of the word, like the mechanics of coding, so that they can even start to, but yeah, you're right. So yeah, so about second grade, yeah. Yep. But even like I said, with kindergarten, we've done a way we tied in culturally responsive. We did a step lesson. So the kids, we talked about stepping again, the fraternities and sororities, because of course, Coach Hicks coached the step team, so the kindergartners wanted to step. And so what we did is we talked about, the call and response. So a lot of that is rooted in African culture. So when the step master calls, this, we do this move. If we do, yep, see Whitney, yep. So this is kindergarten, but we do it as an unplug. So also, I forgot to say that too. If you guys, I know the unplugged lessons, like, well, the kids are going to trip. They are very important in computer science. Let me say that again. The unplugged lessons are very important in computer science, because if you want your kids to be able to take it away from the dragging and dropping of the blocks, they need to understand those concepts. And so even if you come up with your own, and we're going to do that now, coming up with, going into ChatGPT and say, hey, how can I bring in a, lesson on events for kindergarten using no computers? Okay. So what I do want us to do before we run out of time, I know we're getting close, is I want us to go in to your favorite AI prompt. It can, where it be Magic School or Google, ChatGPT, Google, Gemini. And I want us to take some time together to craft a culturally responsive prompt, or excuse me, a prompt to get a culturally responsive lesson hook. So as you guys reflected on those communities, I want you to figure out a way to add that into your prompt. Okay. Now, what we'll go through is kind of the things. If you want to go with me, you can, or if you want to do your own thing. But I do want some of y'all to come off of mute and share what you came up with. Now, if your communities, you can use your students, ethnicities if you want. But I do want to challenge you to think about some other ways to talk about community too. Okay. So I will lead us through. I'm going to use Gemini today. And if you guys want to work along with me, feel free. This is our workshop part of our time together. All right. And so first of all, you always want to give your code a personality, or excuse me, give your chat a personality. Okay. So I like to just talk in first person. I'm going to use, I like fourth grade. That's a nice round number. Fourth grade. And I'm going to do this. I'm going to say dance teachers. Let's look at how we can do some incorporation. Okay. Then you kind of want to talk about the purpose. There's an acronym, you all, and I cannot remember what it, and I've sat in so many seminars and people have said it and made such beautiful slides, and Coach was not an active listener. I know there's a name for it. It's like SMART or something. It's like persona, something, plan, maybe. But anyway, we're going to get there. So fourth grade dance teacher, then you want to talk about what it does, okay? Or what you want to do. So I want to create a lesson. And let's say you want to do events, okay? Incorporating events in computer science, okay? So then you say, you want to give it as many details. I want the lesson to be completely unplugged. The more that you give it, the better the output will be, okay? And then let's say completely unplugged. I want the lesson to be movement based, and we'll say rooted in African American culture. Let's see if we can get a step one to come up. The lesson should be 2 sessions of 30 minutes, include objectives. And then you want to tell it how you want it to report. So if you wanted to do a lesson plan for you, it can. You wanted to create an activity, you can. So I'm going to say create a lesson outline and a not kickoff. It is a we'll say introductory activity. There's a name for it. Okay. So I'll leave that up for a second because in case you guys are creating your own, I'll leave mine up for a minute so you all can copy off me like the kids say. Okay. So just like where you are, and again, if you want to use your own, so the idea that y'all walk away with something today, this is Coach Hicks's party favor. So you don't have to I just made this up so we can see the diversity of what can come up. Okay. So I'm going to hit enter. Gemini is not being my friend today. It's usually, and I actually use
it's Zoom. It makes it
slower.
Yeah, Zoom makes it slower.
If you guys, I use different. I have different tools for each. So if I'm doing images, I tend to use like a lot of my HBCU stuff. I do the art, the kid, like so I can make sure I have brown and black children that range the spectrum of our and then I can put the different HBCUs. I strictly use ChatGPT for that. Gemini I tend to use, and I pay for it through my business's domain, but also it tends to be more, I feel like teacher-y. Like it gets the lesson planning, it gets that a little bit better. So anyway, so the code and motion algorithms, which again, shameless plug, would tie into our Joseph choreograph a dance for the Josephine Baker lesson, where your kids learn about, I think that's events-based, isn't it? See, look at the universe moving in our favor, Nicole. So you're going to do the code. So this would be an algorithm. So you see, it gives you the code concepts, right? And then some of the cultural and dance things. This is how the Gemini chose to. Oops, sorry, just maximize the chat. Lost you guys for a second. All right, so it shows the core concepts, also the learning objectives. All right. So this is a way, like I said, if you guys are, and I know sometimes when we talk about introducing culture or, especially if we don't share the culture of our students' background, like, how do I do this respectively? Again, not replacing this with student content, because I still would say lead with those conversations with your students, but also make sure that you are, what's the word I'm looking for? Make sure that you are starting out with student information, but this can help you put the building blocks into place. And so I know we do want to leave some time for, oh, I'm sorry, I ran my mouth too long. So I will pause it. If you guys enjoy question time, if you guys want to ask questions, or if you want to share your prompt, and kind of give us an overview of what you got. Also if you put Elementari in there, it'll help you like shape lessons too.
No.
Oh, sorry.
You wait. I have made a custom GPT. It
Oh,
will
I'm sorry.
blow
See?
your mind away. All grounded under understanding by design UDL principles. I'm really impressed by it. I learned a lot about prompting and a lot about how AI works and a lot
Come
about
on,
how
friend.
developing with AI is working. And I think this is the type of information that's really, really helpful when you're dealing with AI, because so much of AI is like a black box and
Yep.
to a lot of people. So we're gonna uncover this black box. I even got OpenAI Playground, so you will be able to play as a developer with all the different variables. We learned about variables yesterday, and it's gonna be great. But yeah, I'm excited.
You are. Can we just okay? So before we start, we just need to take a moment of appreciation to give some shine, because Nicole is so awesome. When I tell you that she will sit here and, first of all, okay, I am definitely the creative, as you all can see by this cape. But Nicole is very patient. So like Nicole, like, Victor, I need you to turn in my lesson plan, and I'm like, okay, and it'll be like 2 weeks later, Nicole's like, hey, Victor, have you thought about that lesson plan? She has a very good way, but also the complete amount, because I think it's important as we talk about, the culturally responsive, and I mean all the things that I talked about today in the lesson. Like, it's important that we are intentional about giving the people that are creating those spaces their shine, because it's not easy. Because we were talking earlier, some of you guys may have come in on that part of the conversation, to be, a tech startup in that space, and also to be, offer again a great place for, computer science as a whole, but also allowing teachers to have the creativity to make lessons and to, to have conversations like this. So I do have to give my friends some shine before our time runs out. But I'm open for any questions. I'm gonna stop talking now because time's almost up. But you all have, I'm gonna share my slides. My email is in there, so y'all can call or text, or I have Google Voice and all that good stuff. So, but any questions?
I will add to our Google Doc master sheet thing all of the emails, socials of all of our speakers and presenters at some point. So you'll be able to have access to all of that. I would also like to link in there a spreadsheet of all of us. So if you want to connect with others in this PD, we can also get connected that way. So I'll be working on that soon, so we can all share and support each other.
Yes. See, and being intentional about, you are doing all the great things, Nicole. You in creating an intentional space around that work is awesome. So any questions or concerns? Anything in the chat page? I feel like I've lost the little button.
Yeah, there were just a couple of comments that people like the unplugged activities, so they're right there with you. And I don't see any questions. Lots of
Okay.
comments and participation. So if anybody comes up with questions, definitely throw them in afterwards, and we'll get them to Coach Hicks.
Yep. See, look, I'm gonna use this. This is cute. They have a function, so like they have the kids creating this. I didn't think about that. So they do the if then, the conditionals, and then they go into functions. I'm gonna link. Okay, so yeah, give me a second. I'm gonna link this I'm gonna put the prompt and my output into into the slide. So give me a second. Then I'll share the link with you guys for the presentation. So y'all have all this together. All right. Anything else from me, friend? You need? All right. Well, I'm good to go.
Yeah. Thank you
Thank you
so much for
guys.
joining us.
I'm gonna hang around for a little bit for the next part since I'm here. So I'm not responsible for any more children today.
You could definitely jump in and into the panel. So we welcome
Okay.
your input.
Hey, I'm amongst good company. I love it. So that works.